Hello again, and welcome back to a continuation of our class. This is our online lecture portion of cheese, the cheese chapter. Before I jump into that, though, just want to kind of say, so far all of our labs have been really looking good. We're getting those skills built, utilizing the products that we're producing in the lab. And I think you're starting to really kind of grasp the whole idea of what Gourmet is all about. At least it seems to be in the products that we're putting out. So with that being said, let's jump into cheese. And we're going to kind of break this up a little bit. We're going to kind of talk a little bit about the history part. And your textbook is going to dive into this a lot deeper than what I'm going to share with you. But then we'll kind of get into the process of actually making the cheese. The first kind of story we start with is, how was cheese first made? We're not 110% sure the exact how. What we do know is that the stories that have been passed down to us through our history is that there was a nomadic group moving from point A to point B, and they used the stomach of a calf to actually transport the milk. So the temperature was hot, there was agitation, moving around. The milk inside the stomach. What they did not realize is that there's an enzyme in that calf's stomach that helps to curdle and create that cheese curd, giving us kind of the birth of how cheese was made. It was really kind of by accident. At least that's what all the stories kind of point to and lead to. Now, with that being said, we look at the Dark Ages, we look at the 1800s, the 19th century. Throughout history, we have become very good at producing cheese. The methods that we've learned, the techniques that we've learned are not really that much different today than they were in the 1800s, for example. Now, during that time period, though, the 1800s, they did it more out of necessity to preserve the milk, to have product and food that they could eat throughout the winter and so on and so forth. They didn't do it for the same reasons that we do today. We do it more for, business, number one, but flavor profiles, ingredients that are used, and more of an enhancement would probably be the best way to kind of say that. So when we look at this, the farmers obviously would raise the animals. Sheep, goat, cow. These are probably our predominant ones that we think of when our cheese is being made. However, if you look at buffalo milk, for example, we look around the world, we can use mare, we can use yak, llamas. There's even stories and businesses that are trying to produce camel's milk. Well, there's a couple of problems with that. One, getting the milk. Two, getting enough production of the milk to really be, productive, if you will. Cow's milk is pretty easy to get. Goat's milk is pretty easy to get. Sheep's milk is pretty easy to get. So we've become really good at mastering the cheese-making process. Kind of giving you a little bit of U.S. history of cheese making. We saw in 1851 the very first actual cheese factory was opened up in Rome, New York by Jesse Williams. 1851, think about that. That's when we started making cheese in the United States. As we kind of come forward, in about 1990, we were actually producing about 8 billion pounds of cheese a year. I think that number today is in the upwards of around 12 to 13 billion pounds. So we've increased production as we've gone. We've seen an increase in artisan-style cheeses, goat cheese being a perfect example of how easy it is to make the cheese. Believe it or not, cheese is one of the largest exported products that we have in the United States. We send out a lot, but it's also one of the largest imported that we do. And there's a lot of laws on what types of cheeses and what can come into the United States. Kind of thinking of it in this sense that it doesn't take a lot to produce cheese. Depends on the type that you're talking about. There's a lot of variables in that. So with that being said, let's flip over, and I'm going to bounce. I hit the wrong button. Hang on. We're going to go over here to the PowerPoint. This is the cheese making process, all right? So when we talk about milk, being pre-treated, homogenization, pasteurization, and heat, the homogenization process breaks it down to where the fat and the water particles are so small they combine. They don't separate. If we didn't do that, you would see separation. You'd have water come to the top of the milk. Goat's milk is naturally homogenized, so you have to deal with that in that manner. The problem with homogenization, it breaks the fat down so small that we have to add other things to the milk to create a larger curd. Pasteurization, both good and bad, however you want to look at it, in the cheese world it's not as good. And I say that because we're heating it, all right? So we're giving it just a little bit of a cooked taste, if you will. And it kills all the bacteria. I think our textbook refers to it as the friendly bacteria, the good stuff. Now, you can make cheese from raw cow's milk, but there's a law that is involved with that, meaning you have to age it at least 60 days before you can sell it. Once you hit that 60-day mark after you've aged it, then it's a sellable product. But before that, unpasteurized milk can be made. We use the pasteurized, though, and we can pretty much eat it, consume it, and sell it right away if we want to. So that's kind of our first step, is we treat the milk. In these large cheese places, what they will actually do is when the big tanker truck comes in, before they even unload it, they will test it, and they'll test it for certain things like antibodies, and then they'll test it for colostrum, and then they'll test it for acidity. There's another test, and I think it's got something to do with the sugars and the fat content. And if it's not up to their standards, they reject the whole batch. Us, on the other hand, we're going to be dealt with what we get from our suppliers. So, but it will be homogenized and pasteurized, and that'll be just fine for what we're going to do in our lab. Then it goes through an acidification process. This could be a vinegar, it could be lemon juice of some sort, it could be a tartaric or citric acid that's added to it, and it changes the pH level. In some cases, if the pH level is really, really low, we have to double the amount of acid that we add to it. And we'll be doing that. And then what happens then is going to be the coagulation, or the curd development, if you will, and then the separation of curds in whey and water. And when we separate them out, you can see some of the pictures in the textbook of this actual process. These little small little clumps form, and then this little white, kind of light milky color liquid is left over. That's your whey. That's the unwanted in the cheese making process that we're doing. Now that can be turned into like a whey ricotta. However, we're not going to do that because we won't have enough of it to work with. So we separate that, then we salt the curds, and the salting helps control bacteria and also remove excess moisture that we don't want. And then we have different types of molds that we use to put the curds in and actually mold it out. We might weigh it down. You might have natural weight, and sometimes gravity can actually do this for you. Certain types of cheeses have certain types of molds. So different types of cheeses are going to have different types of mold. For example, this is a disposable ricotta cheese mold. We will use this. And you have certain types of molds that log that you see with goat cheese. That is a particular type mold. This is another type of a mold where we can do our harder styles in it. This sits on top with our bandaged curds, and then we weigh it down and kind of, whoops, you can't see that, sorry. It kind of presses it out, so all the water and the whey come out. So we have those to kind of work with too. One thing in helping with the separation of curds and whey, and I forgot to do this, but I need to replace this. This is called a mousseline bag. This is a real fine mesh. There's another mesh that's a little bit larger, but I have found these to be absolutely the ticket and fantastic in separating curds and whey. You literally We'll open it up, pour your curds and whey into this. Whey drains out. All that's left over is now your cheese, the cheese curds. I know I have one of these. I should have one more. I have to look for it. But these are about $5 online. And if you're going to do this a lot at home, I'm going to highly, highly recommend you get some of these. I used to have 5 of each, but I think over the years people have really enjoyed and liked them, and they've kind of put them in their bag and didn't tell me and all. But that helps kind of separate that part. Now, the ripening process, or sometimes referred to as aging, we have to let the cheese ripen. So it has to go through the natural process of breaking things down and combining into that one large curd. It works out really, really well for our cheese making, and then we go into the dry aging process. You're going to find all kinds of different tools for this. Let's see, milk sources. This is the PowerPoint that we're looking at now, so I was just kind of scanning through it, trying to move on. Salt's your friend in this particular case. But I think really the other part of the making of this that it's really, really key and important, your equipment has got to be clean. You can't have any other outside material or fats or oils or anything inside that. And when you go to use it, it has to be stainless steel, meaning that if you're using an aluminum pot, it's not going to work correctly, and you could run the risk of actually having an acid reaction and it turn kind of gray and give you a metallic-y taste. That's not good for cheese production. We don't want that. So we need to clean everything good before we actually start doing it. And then looking too at classifications. Classifications meaning the types of cheeses. Fresh, rind ripens, whether it be a bloom type or whether it be a natural. Wash rind. So wash rind means we're going to use some sort of a brine or some type of an acid to wash the outside. Some cases we'll put ash on it. We'll also inoculate it with a edible bacteria that will grow on the outside, i.e. your brie is a good example of this. That outer rind helps to kind of break down the curd to where it's kind of that smooth, creamy, rich texture. The blue veins are actually inoculated, where we punch holes in the curds and we inject a form of penicillin in there, and that creates our blue cheese. So your textbook and the PowerPoint too are going to go through a little bit more details about each one of these styles. Here's fresh, examples of this. Now when you have fresh cheeses like this, these are usually ones that are going to have an expiration date on them, so that use by date. There's no preservatives in this. There's more water content in it. When we get to our drier or hard cheeses, it's going to go through what they call a cheddarization process, which is basically you're cutting the curds up smaller, turning them, flipping them, stacking them, and the natural weight just pushes out more water. So the more water loss, the harder the cheese. The more water loss, the safer it is from a bacterial perspective. And again, salt's your best friend for this. Some things like feta cheese will be sent to you in a brine, helping to preserve it. Here's more information on your soft ripens, the bloomy rind ripens. So there's that brie that we're referring to, which, side note, you can have all the brie. I'm not a big brie fan. The other thing you're going to find too, like with some of these wax coatings, it refers to your wax coating where, I don't think it's in here in this slide, but things like the red, the black, and the white wax coating, those are indicators of how much it's been aged. So your black rind is a how many days was it? 360 or more. The red, it was 180, and I think the clear, the kind of lighter one, is more like a 60-day ripening, aging process. Excuse me. The other thing that you're going to find, and you'll find all the recipes for this week in the blackboard part, we have to go back and add in the natural enzymes, the natural bacteria, if you will, from the pasteurization process. So we use different starter cultures for that. But each starter culture, depending on the style of cheese, you heat it to a certain temperature. Some things are as low as 90 degrees. Some things are as high as 200 degrees. So the caution that I'll give you when you're doing your cheese is not to overheat it, all right? When you go into the labs and you're doing this, you don't turn that heat all the way up. In the lower cases of like the 90 to 100 degree range, we'll do that over a water bath, where we'll just keep adding hot water, slowly bringing that temperature up. For you, though, when you go into lab, start your milk on a very low temperature. As a matter of fact, when I come around and check on you, if I turn it down, don't be surprised. If you are doing this at too hot of a temperature, you're going to scorch it, you're going to burn it, you have ruined your cheese. So now it has all that scorch flavor into it. So that's your kind of big warning there. Mascarpone, Queso Blanco, and ricotta. That's our three cheeses that we're going to be doing. And again, it's a very simple process. Matter of fact, the Queso Blanco is milk, vinegar, salt. Pretty much staple item that you have at home. My hope is that you take this with you and explore. If you want to explore, New England Cheesemaker is a good website. Lenners, LEENERS.com is another great website for finding all of your equipment that you'll need. Matter of fact, a lot of the stuff that I've got here like this came in a starter kit from Lenners to start everything you needed. It had everything in it except for the pot and the milk. Now, I think it was about $150, $175 for the whole kit, but I got my, I'll show you. I got a thermometer in the kit. I got, what else? I got a bag of pure salt. That's always best. And then we've got a big old chunk of the red wax you can do for your aging of it. The starter cultures we got the rennet, we got the calcium chloride, which your calcium chloride and your rennet is going to help develop the curd into a much larger one. I also had gotten a book with it by Ricky Carroll. She's gotten into cheese making big time, and I think that's all I got. I'll show you all this too, but these are all the different cultures, and the liquid rennet versus the rennet tablets, which the liquid rennet is usually from the calf stomach, and then the powder or the tablets are from a vegetable base. Some people are looking for that vegetable base rennet also. But back to Ricky Carroll, she's got a fantastic book. You can look her up on, I think it's called Home Cheese Making or something like that is the name of it. But it really breaks it down into real simple terms, so it's easy to understand and easy to do at home. If you decide that this is something you do want to do, and you get all the stuff to do it with and start doing it at home, get a book, get a notepad, whatever. Start a log. And I say that because if you do one particular batch, you may get a different end results, or you may have done something differently. Take note of the temperatures, take note of humidity, how you stored it. Did you wrap it in cheesecloth? Did you wrap it in plastic? Did you put it in a Ziploc bag? All those little things can affect the outcome of the cheese itself. I'll tell you a funny story. There's a refrigerator on the Jefferson campus that when the first semester we did this, we devoted that to the cheese class. So I would adjust the temperature, trying to get it in that right, I think it's 55 to 65 range, for it to start ripening and aging. Friday morning, I come in, and it wasn't quite, it wasn't quite at 50. It was still like around 46, 47. So I made just a slight adjustment, and it started kind of coming up, and I had got it where it was dead on 55. I was like, okay, I'm not going to touch it. Go about my day, walk by at the end of the day, checked it one more time, perfect 55, 56. I said, we're good. So I left. Came in Monday morning, out of curiosity, the first thing I did was I went right to that cooler to check on how things were going. I opened it up, and it was like a heater was just blowing out this hot air. I looked down at the bottom of the cooler, and there's this puddle of liquid. I was like, uh-oh, something's not good. Lo and behold, I had adjusted it too much, and it shut off the refrigeration completely and put it into defrost mode, so it was like 79 degrees. So it literally took that cheese that we had just waxed, and we were aging it perfectly. We were going to turn it every day and all the things we were supposed to do, and it just blew every bit of the butterfat out of it, which then turned it into a sour cheese, and it was real grainy. I didn't like the texture of it. You know, so we learned our lesson. But I made notes in my logbook not to do that again. So when I do that process with that type of cheese, and I think that was a farmhouse cheddar, as a matter of fact, I know how to control that temperature better. I know what to watch out for. So that log is very important. I don't want you to be intimidated at all by this. This is, like I said, it's a very easy process. Queso Blanco, if memory serves me correct, I think it's 2 ounces of vinegar to a gallon of milk to a tablespoon of salt, heated to 190 or 195, and then the separation happens. Maybe it's 200, something like that. But I'm saying that's how easy this is. So please don't at all be intimidated about doing this. So that's more or less my song and dance with this. I thought about doing the old opening line of who cut the cheese joke, you know, but I decided I wouldn't do that. And I really do hope you're looking forward to this particular lab. On a side note with this too, Publix has got a great selection of cheeses also, and this is no plug to them, but Whole Foods has probably got the best cheese selection to the general population, general public, if you will, us. In our area, they have got just a huge selection of cheeses that they've got some stuff I've never heard, I've never seen. You know, and that's kind of like, a lot of people will compare cheese and wine together, not pairing it to eat, but comparing it as far as they're both living, breathing things. And if you don't stay on top of it, you're not involved in it, by your reading, your research, your tasting, so on and so forth, you know, there's so many different companies and brands out there, it's easy to get lost. So next time you're in the cheese store or a grocery store, just kind of look through the cheese section. You see something you've never had before, try it. Got nothing to lose, right? Publix will give you tastings of their cheeses. They don't have as many varieties as Whole Foods does, but go to Whole Foods. They have got a fantastic cheese department. So not plugging them, but just sharing information with you. So that's all I've got for you. I'm going to get this posted for you, and then I will see you guys in the lab.